start with things that are easy to do. There's a story, and I'm saying maybe that story is not the right story. There's a different story.
I mean, one of the reasons we won't ground ourselves in the body is you're actually grounding yourself in the unknown. You're grounding yourself in the frontier of your next maturation. So we'd much rather stay up in the head where we can name things exactly and know everything and not be surprised.
So recently I was listening to a really great podcast with the poet and philosopher, I guess, David Whyte, where he was discussing the idea of how people sometimes live where their current reality sits about 5 years behind a kind of internal knowledge of where they need to be or what they need to be doing.
Yes, I think one of the great disciplines of a human life is to catch up with yourself. This part of you that lies below the horizon of your understanding is the part of you that's already matured into the next dispensation of your existence. You know intuitively that if you drop below that horizon, your surface life will fall apart. And so many of your friendships or relationships, you don't know, they may or they may not, but you're afraid. You're afraid that you're putting things in jeopardy. And this is why we turn our face away from that edge of maturation.
This idea of a split self and the disassociation or frustration that it might cause in an individual really struck a chord with me personally, and it made me think about the usefulness of journaling for a lot of creatives who might be kind of sensitive around these issues that we're discussing here and that David Whyte discussed. Now, for me, this split self or disassociated self has manifested in a lot of output of work, to be honest, and work on my own creative goals. However, also at the same time, not feeling connected or that present in a lot of moments.
Sometimes, your life breaks down and you hit present reality with such velocity that you break apart on impact. And this is a time-honored way of transformation, but it's very hard on us to go through it that way. There's another way of doing it, which is to stay up with the edge of your own seasonal maturation, and that occurs below this invisible line inside you.
Anyway, the reason why I set this up in this video about journaling is because that practice of journaling, of writing on certain prompts, and we're going to get to some prompts in a moment here, that process is a way that we can try and close that gap between that sense of a split self perhaps, and find more grounding and more connection and more presence, and also as a creative or artist in the end make more satisfying and more interesting work.
I worked with Richard Foreman, a great theater director, and he used to always say, stories hide the truth, because people hop on the train and then they go only to what they recognize. And the truth is something that's hidden, usually, because all our habits, all our politeness, all that niceness that you're talking about often hide certain social conventions, hide what's going on. And I kind of get repelled at the idea of, you do a theater piece and you tell the audience something, It's like you're superior, you have a superior understanding, or you've created a situation where you can tell something they haven't thought of. That's not usually the case. We got to, jumpstart our sense of wonder and our sense of mystery. That's all.
Now I'll stop with all that prosaic stuff for the moment, because I imagine that's enough set up there for most people. But before we jump in, I wanted to give a shout out to this week's sponsor and talk a little bit about my own process with the piano at the moment. And that sponsor is Skillshare. So recently I've been going through a few bits in my own life, in my own journey here, and dealing with that stuff has really brought me deeply back to my practice around playing piano and doing some songwriting around that. Now, in terms of my goals with the piano, I keep it really simple, and that's just to play it every day. For me, the most reliable time to do this is in the mornings, and I've built Skillshare now into that daily practice. The course I'm doing there is called Jazz Piano, the Ultimate Beginner's Course. When I'm having my first coffee, I'll sit in bed and go through a few songs that I'm learning. Then I'll just spend 15 or 20 minutes working through some of those lessons in that Skillshare piano material. As I said before, what I value from doing this with Skillshare is building a relationship with that teacher to a place where I can trust that they're bringing me through a useful structure of lessons, and that if I stick with that process, I'm going to get somewhere. So whatever your own creative goals are, when you join Skillshare, you'll have access to courses from animation to photography to graphic design and music, as well as their learning paths where they gather a sequence of classes to give you a guided and tailored route on your journey. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or follow the QR code that I've put on screen now will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So go get started and take a look. It's absolutely free, and taking that journey will support both you and this channel. A huge thanks from me for anyone who follows through with that. And with all that said, I'm going to jump into the video and the prompts in a moment. But before that, in terms of what's going on this week, with a lot of should we call stressful news, I would say. I guess that goes for most weeks these days. I thought what I'd do is play you a little song to take us into that first prompt, something nice and chill that can hopefully settle us in a chilled out, nourishing way. Listen. Dirty old river, must you keep rolling, rolling into the night? People so busy, make me feel dizzy, traffic lights shine so bright. And we don't feel no fear, as long as we gaze at Waterloo sunset.
And we all have, in my experience, very similar experiences of forming stories, right? But the stories themselves, as you pointed out, can become very, very problematic over time if we're not courageous. And I do believe it takes a lot of courage to start questioning which stories are generative and which are corrosive.
So this first prompt has come out of my own experience, or a couple of experiences that I've had in my own life, where I've gone through something or challenged something challenging, or that has brought up some fear in me, and I've pushed through it. I've pushed through that challenge, and it felt like I've kind of popped through a little bubble and come out on the other side, and those experiences where that's happened have left me reflecting on that idea of irrational and rational fear. The heart of this journal prompt draws attention to the baggage that we carry as modern humans, where the role of fear and the real job of fear, that's in the way that it's enlisted to protect us from danger, can be put into overdrive or kind of blown up across multiple issues that stop us doing all kinds of things that will never actually really cause us real threat. By journaling and systematically thinking about the difference between the fears that we feel that are rational fears and those things that limit and stop us doing certain things with our creative practice that actually don't necessarily require any real fear and are just based on irrational ideas of threat. we can chart a path that over time is going to bring us freedom from those things that are stopping us, that are irrational. I've done a fair bit of work on this channel around this issue in the past, so at the end, if you're interested in exploring this further, I'm going to link 2 videos about different artists who have really worked against this idea of irrational forms of threat that have limited their practice, and by doing so have found a lot of freedom and originality in their work.
The only thing that I want to hear more about is where are you selling and how is it sale? Like, are kids wearing it that are like not your friends?
Well, this t-shirt here is the latest I did, and before that it was like most of the people who rocked it, I knew him, but like when I dropped these, I wasn't ready for that.
Where
I was surprised.
Sell it at? Online?
Yeah, only online.
So Montreal, do you ship it?
Yeah.
To Montreal or to everywhere?
Yeah, mostly in Montreal. I shipped one in California and one in Toronto. I have a website, yeah. I started this year, but before only on Instagram.
How many followers on your Instagram?
680, something like that.
And do those people like...
So the second prompt that I wanted to bring and hand over here comes from a clip from Virgil Abloh, where he's mentoring a young designer, and he really demonstrates his laser focus on getting your project away from a website or just an online space, and getting it into a place where whatever your creative ideas are, they're operating in real world spaces and forming real connections. So this prompt is about the integration between the creative work we do and the kind of identity that we might express in our creative work, the integration of that with our day-to-day identity. My own personal journey has definitely involved this in the past, where I've spent many years making creative projects and mostly doing it privately and for the online space, and where this did build up a lot of skills in certain elements of my practice, actually also led to a really negative kind of splitting, as we discussed earlier, between this thing that I was expressing in the online space and actually certain ways that I was moving through the world. So yeah, coming back to that prompt now, and I wanted to hand that one over to you, of just how can we, maybe in small ways, actually connect our creative work, our creative practice more deeply to our day-to-day life and the relationships we have day-to-day and that identity that we move through the world with.
Point. Like if people go to your website, you know, they don't follow you, you never know, they're just typing it in and going. But if people are like into your brand, then they start following you on your Instagram, then your followers go up, and then you have a better metric, and then they can wear the items and tag you back, and then you can sort of create a dialogue, you know.
More about like putting the people that support me like on top,
yeah, you just want to like create a community.
Yeah.
Like rather than the garments just going out and having a life of their own, it makes me think you should be doing like a movie screening every time you do it, not just putting it online. Anything to get people physically in the same place that are around your brand.
Okay, you mean a screening is like, yeah, like an event. Like
like it could be at someone's apartment, be like, oh, we're dropping
a party, like,
yeah, once every month, you know, or once every, so people know, you know, parties are great in current culture because it brings people together and they do what they normally do, is just hang out. So if you can.
So the final prompt is actually something a little bit different. It's more of an exercise that I've used in the past that I've found really useful in terms of leading into what is kind of journaling, and I definitely wanted to include it in this video, and that is morning pages.
When do you do your morning pages?
In the morning.
first thing.
First thing. Do you do them in bed?
No, I have a big leather writing chair, and I get up in the morning, I go to the kitchen and get a cup of cold coffee made the night before, and I take a big mug of coffee and my morning pages journal, and I settle into my writing chair, and I usually look at the clock, and just out of curiosity of how long it's going to take me each day to do them. And then I start in, and I find that sometimes it's quick, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, the answers will come to us.
This is more of an exercise than a prompt, but it's doing that same task of journaling in a kind of different form, trying to better integrate the wants and needs and ideas of the subconscious or internal self with the conscious you in the present. The process of morning pages, once you get into it, can feel a little bit like magic. It's like that thing that people talk about when they say that it's almost like they're not working anymore, like something's kind of being channeled through them. And yeah, it really can get you to that place that's a really nice creative flow state that will feed into any kind of work that you do, even if that's off the page entirely. The rules of morning pages are pretty simple. You sit down every day, in the morning preferably, obviously, and fill 3 pages with longhand stream of consciousness writing. This is a practice of connection and brain dumping, really, and it isn't ever meant to be edited or shared at all.
Do I have to write them in longhand? Can I use my computer to do my morning pages journal?
Well, I tend to say do them in longhand, because when you work on your computer, you tend to go very quickly. And so you sort of get speed and distance, but you don't get depth. When you are writing by hand, it connects you to your emotions. You really feel what you're feeling as you write it. And I just feel that they give you a more accurate perception of your life if you do them by hand. As you write your morning pages, you'll hear a negative voice that says, oh, you're so petty. Oh, you're so grumpy. Oh, you're so inarticulate. And this is your censor. And sometimes you can pause and say to your censor, would you like to just have the floor for a minute? And then you give your censor the floor, and the censor says, you write short, stumpy little sentences. You aren't grounded. It has a whole little laundry list of things that it feels. And after it is done sort of diatribing at you, you say, well, thank you for sharing. And you keep right on going.
I love any process these days that is built around that concept of anti-sharing and anti-editing in its approach. And with regular usage, it really can be a tool that can help us pick off all that plaque that modern culture puts on, trying to make us internalize the idea that everything we do must be shared and manicured in order to help us become something in the eyes of others.
And to enjoy the story that speaks to you. And that's really all we do anyway. I mean, regardless. Do you know what I'm saying? We don't have to... we don't have to convince anyone of anything. We can just enjoy what we enjoy.
As always, a huge thanks to the paid supporters. And if you do want to support my work this year, come check that out. It really matters. And with all that said, the 2 videos I mentioned earlier are on the screen now. If you want something else to watch, check them out. And yeah, peace. Good luck in your work till next time. And yeah, speak soon.